Okay, so I think perhaps we'll make a start now, and I'll continue to admit people as they arrive. This meeting is, of course, as ever, being recorded so that we can share it with colleagues that aren't able to attend today. Before we started, I wanted to just take a moment to reflect on what's happened in Heaton Park at the synagogue. As it happens, this is my home, so I live in Heaton Park. So I went for a run this morning, and there's people wearing stab vests around the park, right? And this is affecting us in different ways, and I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on that and about the role that we play in terms of community cohesion and the kind of support that we provide to our communities, but also the role that this kind of group plays in supporting the people doing the support. That makes sense. So, and I think we've got to acknowledge this and then progress forward. So today we have a session on AI and governance. So this is really important, and I'm delighted that we have 4 excellent speakers. So we've got 4 very short 10-minute slots here. The reason for that is so that we can cover a lot of ground, because there's a lot to cover, and hopefully that will give you some ideas about the different things that you might want to be considering as you do this. And it might be that HAILIE then is able to support in different ways in terms of helping you to get what you need on those different kinds of topics. You can kind of think about these as being teasers almost. So there's much more depth to these. What we'll do is we'll start, so they're all on the theme of AI and governance. Some of them are much closer to like the day-to-day nuts and bolts of the governance, and definitely, so Abby's up first, and her talk is absolutely like about AI and governance and how it's used around governance. So we'll hand over to Abby, and 10 minutes starts now, Abs.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. Just very quickly, Abby Renison. I'm work for Magenta Living on the Wirral. My role is head of exec support. I've been 20 years in the profession. I'm not built for the spotlight. I mostly try and do things without people noticing. So when Guy asked me to do this, I was like, yeah, okay. But I love AI. I'm super curious. And I'm just going to talk to you about kind of 3 ways that I've been using AI in our sort of board process. Hopefully you'll find some of it useful. So first thing I've been doing, using AI to analyze how successful our board reporting is being versus our strategic plan. So Magenta have a 6-year strategic plan that takes us to 2030. It's a document that we wrote 18 months ago. It sits on our website, and we obviously have, like all organisations, are governed by a board, and we have significantly sized board packs, circa 200 pages. But what I was really curious about was how successful we're being in when we're authoring our board reports, how aligned we are being to our strategic plan. Are we delivering against our plan? Have we got the reporting of it right? So my objective for AI was to kind of test how well our board reporting reflects the long-term goals, the principles we've set in our strategic plan and our transformation ambitions. So I engineered a prompt that would give me sort of that kind of result. I ran it. I wanted to identify gaps really in where our board reporting was silent on things that we had committed to in our plan, if we were missing a trick on reporting against anything, what recommendations AI might have for strengthening our board reporting against our plan, asking it to look for sort of positive comparisons and reinforcements, so what we were getting right, reporting on well, and any areas that might require sort of further reflection or challenge. The prompt also was engineered in a way that gave me some strategic questions that we could pose to the board at future sessions, and then just an overall sort of assessment and conclusion. So I've done that. I've engineered the prompt. I've done the piece of work. It gave me some really insightful learnings that I've shared with the exec team here, and we're obviously bringing those recommendations that the AI had given us into our future reporting cycles and packs and papers. So that's one of the things I wanted to share is just, if you have similarly sized board packs, you want to know how effective you've been reporting against your strategic vision and plans, then you might, that might be something of interest and of use to you in your organizations. The second way I've used AI recently in the board process is to analyze the feeling, I guess, the sentiment of a board meeting that we had a few months ago. It was, being really honest, it was a pretty tough board meeting, and in my career I've been in many. It was a tough meeting. Some of them are, right, I understand that, but this one was particularly a tough, challenging meeting. My role is not to speak necessarily at the board meetings. I'm kind of capturing output, and it was one of those where I almost daren't look up from the computer. After the meeting, which we did transcribe and record using AI, I asked AI to give me a read on the meeting, really, sort of the feeling that it perceived there was in the room. And of course, AI came back and said, well, I can't do that, more or less, because it doesn't perceive feeling, it doesn't perceive emotions and tone of voice and body language. It can't feel the mood of the room. But I kind of had to know, was this me, or was this really a tough one? I asked it to say, fine, okay, well, why can't you can't do that for that reason, but I still need to understand this. I want to process what's happened in this meeting. So I asked it to write me the prompt that would enable me to kind of understand a bit more about that. So it did, and it said it can only go off the transcript. It can only go off what is said. So it can infer likely emotions based on people's choice of wording and phrasing. So okay, right, run the analysis then against my transcript. So it did. Interestingly for me, and this is what kind of helped me process it, what AI basically said to me was that actually, despite how you felt, you had a really healthy board meeting, a really healthy discussion, a really good element of challenge. Yes, it was serious, sometimes a bit critical, but actually it was really constructive and solution focused. For me, I just thought that was quite interesting, that when you take the feeling out, the feeling and the vibe and the mood away, actually what you're left with is a really healthy, good meeting. So as I said to you, that kind of helped me process my kind of emotion and feeling around that meeting, and actually it was a really healthy thing to do. So that was just one of the other ways that I've used AI recently, and again, that may or may not be of interest or help to some of you, but potentially it could be, if you're in similarly tough meetings. Was it really as bad as I thought it was? So then the third thing I've been doing, actually it's an area that I'm taking it to the next level with, is are our board papers, I guess, sufficiently tailored to the audience in the room? So I'm always keen to make sure that our board papers have the right alignment, have very clear, are effective, and do what our board need them to do. As many boards do, they want War and Peace on a postage stamp, and so what I was keen to do was analyse our board reports, or what I am keen to do, sorry, is analyse our board reports against the people in the room, their personalities. We have recently done a piece of work to go through personality profiling again. We've done it many times in the career, but as teams evolve, we've had our personality profiles redone, and we've done it for all of our board members as well. But what I'm interested to do now is to take the personality profiles of the board members and look at them against our board reports that we author, to understand where the reports will resonate with the individuals in the room in terms of their personalities, how they like to receive and consume information, where they may have questions, where we may need to simplify our board reports, or conversely add more detail in based on the personalities in the room. And this is really about customizing our content to make sure that our reports really better engage with the decision makers, and perhaps, you know, preempt and deal with some concerns that we know our board reports may have, may generate for our board members. So again, I'll be gathering together the personality profiles. I've got a prompt written and ready and engineered to hopefully return the results I want. And I will load it with the individual personality traits, their preferences, their styles, how they like to be communicated with, to enable us to understand our board reports sort of matching those styles, and matching them to the sort of the reader's preference in terms of their linguistic style. Those who love detail will obviously want more detail, but the high-level thinkers will want more summaries. It's really adapting our board reports to the personalities that are in the room to make sure that we're delivering what they want. So those are the three ways that I've been using it recently. And yeah, I hope that's helpful to some of you, as potentially through the thought of things that you could do as well in your organisations.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Abby. So I've seen, so there's some questions in the chat. What we'll do, and I forgot to say at the beginning because I was getting a little bit emotional, but if we can put questions in the chat, that's great. And we'll collate those at the end, and we'll send them to the speakers so that then they can write some responses to them. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it, because we are very pressed for time. Thanks again, Abby. So next up we have Richard Hawkes talking about Platforms Property Bot.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're all well today. I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay. Oh, crikey. Perfect, I think. Can you... Oh, hang on. I'll use this one. Screen. There we go. Perfect. So can you see my screen now, yeah? Is that yes? Sorry, I haven't got...
That's a yes, there's loads of thumbs up.
Yes. Ah, perfect. Thank you. I've had to... I've only got one monitor, so I've had to put it down. So I'll just quickly take you through what Platform Property Bot is and some of the challenges we faced. And the problem, I mean, the high-level issues we've got is, this is like when iPads came out and everyone, I won't say everyone thought they were an IT expert, but it sets a expectation because technology is coming out to consumers before you've had a chance to get it into the business. And it's certainly the same with AI. So it's like we want to get governance in place, but the horse has well and truly bolted at this point. The expectations have been set. It's moving so fast that we're struggling to keep up with BAU and existing products, let alone looking at how we can leverage this. We know as an organisation that's been through a few mergers, there are some data quality issues that we need to get, and we've experienced this in that, and I'll demo this in a short while, that any kind of AI model is as good as the information that goes into it. Ethics have been a challenge, and the way we've dealt with that is by not working with personal data. So I want to be able to inspire people with AI and to be able to show the art of the possible. But if we were to start doing it with customer data, it's going to slow down the momentum. But I wanted to get people learning about it. So we've gone for a property-only approach for now. And the final bit is that we're struggling with skills. So we've got all of these challenges, but yet we've got this pent-up demand, especially from the exec on board, quite rightly, because this technology is out there and it needs to be leveraged. So I didn't know this slide deck had animation, so I apologize for that. So organizational readiness. So we took a step back and we've done a few things to make sure we're ready as an organization for AI. Started off with creating an AI policy, which we did mid last year. So that's in place. We've then looked at existing processes such as the DPIA, so the Data Privacy Impact Assessment, which is done before any project or change activity. And we've looked at how we can just build the AI processes into what we already have rather than trying to create a new governance stream. Then there's this whole piece around training and getting the workforce aware of what's going on and how to leverage AI in the enterprise. So for us, that's been a few series of lunch and learns where we've demoed some bits and we've had some discussions, as well as some more sort of structured e-learning. Again, we've looked at our existing data protection training to see if there are any opportunities to include it there. We've put some controls in place. So as an organization, we've focused on Microsoft rather than ChatGPT, because it just has that enterprise level integration in place for us. So we've then blocked ChatGPT for people just to minimize the risk. But because of the training and the processes, we're steering people towards Copilot, and we haven't really had any resistance or problems from doing that. We're setting up what we call our data community. So we've got a good working group that's coming together to talk around data and what's happening. Shouldn't be seen as IT led, and that's how we're just sort of trying to change that narrative. And then finally, we're looking at ISO 47001. So we've got the information security ISO standard certificate, but we want to get the AI one that's fairly recently released. So when we're building AI solutions, we don't reinvent the wheel. There is some technology out there which can take care of some of the more risky content. One of the pieces that we use is the Azure OpenAI Content Safety Service. So that then means that as we work with Platform Property Bot, we don't need to worry too much about people doing things that are going to break it, or perhaps try and create responses which contain profanity or anything that really shouldn't be there. So we're leveraging the tools that already exist to try and create a safe environment for working with AI. Before I show you, I'll just tell you what the solution is then and where it is. It's very much, last time I demoed something called the Platformizer, which was a tactical solution for creating letters. This one is going more towards a strategic solution that's available for all of our colleagues. And it gives colleagues the ability to interact with data, but without knowing what the background system is and without needing any expertise in it. And by that, I mean, it's called the property bot, so it contains primarily property related information, but it means that anyone, so even one of our workforce who's a plumber, carpenter, someone out on the road, can start asking questions of our data and getting information about the property that they're in without having to phone back to the office. So we're using AI and the platform property bot to surface information from legacy and cloud-based systems. Rough architecture of it on the right, again, we're just using pieces that are in Azure to make this. We've just, and it's not in there to show you today, but we've got a feedback mechanism. So as people interact with data, they can give it a thumbs up, thumbs down to say whether it was a good response or not, and they can give feedback. And then that feedback goes into the database. We're then able to keep tuning it. So this, the platform property bot gets smarter and smarter over time. Demo, right, I'll just jump onto this. I'm conscious of the time. So I'll just use this interface for it today. And this is just sitting on a set of our property data. So it could be our live housing system, but for the purposes of the demo, we're not using that. This is just an isolated data set, but it's got all of our properties in it and their components and their repairs. So I think there's about, well, I won't say how many, but yeah, so properties, components, and repairs is the final tab of data. I'll go to the ask a question, because this is where it starts to get a bit more exciting, and we can say things like how many properties are in our database, and submit that question. That question, oh, I might need to turn a flow back on, bear with me a moment. That question then gets uploaded to the OpenAI web service, sorry, an OpenAI service within Azure. And once, oh no, it is on, that's brilliant. Yeah, so the question goes from here, it goes through those pieces within Azure, but via Power Automate, and it's taking the question, turning it into a SQL statement because it knows about our database, It's then getting a response back and then giving the answer, but in plain English. So we can see here how many properties are in our database. It says 100,000. Well, there's not. We know as an organisation we've got about 50,000 homes, and this is where the tuning and the data quality is so important, especially if we're going to be providing these tools to other people. The reason it's done that is because it doesn't know the distinction between a dwelling and a block, a commercial unit and a garage. So at the moment, it's just looking at a global figure. I can say how many components does each property have on average. It will do the same. It will construct a SQL statement because it knows about our data set. It will then talk to a couple of databases behind the scenes to execute that, and then we get the response. So we can tell that there's an average of 28 components per property. Obviously that figure is slightly skewed because we know that property count isn't quite right. But finally, I'll just do one more, which is say, can you what property has the most repairs? Now, this is the one that really does highlight that problem around data quality and training, because, and when it comes up, you will see that it says we have something like, it's either 2,000 or 6,000 repairs on a property. Here we go, 6,300 repairs on a property, but it's not a property, it's our office. So that's where people have logged a repair against our office because they weren't able to log it against another asset for some reason or another. But what this is going to, the next steps for this is putting this into Microsoft Teams so that anyone can start asking questions, and we can improve the quality of the data, and we can improve the quality of the model itself so it understands how we operate as an organization. So that was today's one. I think that was it for me, Guy.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Rich. And we'll move on to the next one. So next up, we've got Tom Stevenson, and some of the data integrity issues that we've just heard about from Rich are not present in what Tom's going to be talking about, which is about TSMs. So it's something quite different, top down rather than bottom up. That makes sense.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Hello. Bear with me while I also share my screen. So hopefully you can all see that now. So my name is Tom Stevenson. I am recently a member of HAILIE organising committee, new member of Manchester Statistical Society as well. And in my day job, I work for Bovis Construction, previously Lend-Lease Construction. And my background is not in housing or in software engineering or software development or really analytics either. It's actually in project planning, in construction and development. And that's what I've done over the past sort of 10 years. So despite that, I'm going to talk to you about the TSM and some insights that we have been able to glean from that data through a platform that I've built. And along with that is the power of a systematic approach and of curiosity and a playful approach to perspective and ultimately using tools that are this advanced technology, AI, machine learning that we're all here to hear about. So I started my journey. We talk about data skills gaps and technology skills gaps a lot. In 2020, I started a journey of upskilling myself. I could have done it a lot quicker had I not had a day job, but I did. And now I'm sat here presenting to you guys, will be, something that I've built using a software architecture and software development approach because I was able to use AI tools. So here is an overview of all of the things I hope to touch on a little bit, maybe not in this particular presentation. This is more of a teaser. But what I do want to frame is what the problem is. So, or what the problem was that we were trying to solve. So we now have the tenant satisfaction measures data set for the first time. And that's a brilliant sector-wide data set that you have all contributed to. But the problem that we set out to solve when Guy communicated with me using the approach we're talking about, which I'll get into shortly, he actually sent me a website to convey an idea, which is brilliant, that's an option for us. The problem was, what does the TSM data say? Because ultimately it's hard, it's brilliant that it exists, but it's a lot there. And it's hard to know anyway what to prioritize. And you guys know far better than I do that housing is hard, the regulatory environment, market pressures, etc. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we need to ultimately the requirement for the tenant satisfaction measures is that you guys have to give the data. But what it actually also means is that because that now exists in an aggregated data set, we can use that data as well as providers and as advisors to glean insight. Now, how that could sort of come back to us is both positive and negative, of course. So we could validate or even discover new ways to help ourselves as organizations and to focus on the right things. We could do that through custom tools that I'll talk you through, and unlocking sector experience and even tenant experience. Of course, there are negatives, potential negatives around everything to do with data, and that's potentially security risks and misuse of data, accidental or otherwise. We could also focus on the wrong thing and establish patterns in technical debt, which I'll touch on very briefly later. But what we should do about this ultimately, I'm suggesting, is we should learn from each other. You know, as I have said, I am not a software engineer, and yet I have still built something that allows us to glean insights through data analytics wrapped in a tool on a nice shiny website. So this is a slide of that. I'll now flick over to the actual live website. So this is the TSM Insights by HAILIE that I'm referring to. This is designed to give three things. So you can see here your rank, pretty standard. That will take out of all of the market, all of the contributors to the data set, a composite score from your the responses that were given by your tenants on those satisfaction measures. It will then translate that, if you like, into a percentile that you sit in out of 100% compared to all of the other providers, your peers. Which percentile do you sit in? So if you're in the 10th percentile, that's useful to know because it allows us to do something clever with the prioritizing. It'll also, in future years, once we have the data, tell you whether you're improving, maintaining, or declining in your position overall. And then the really nice bit, the most elegant part of this, is that it will tell you, in theory, what you should focus on. Now, that comes from a couple of things. So it's about understanding your position and your performance against each of the tenant perception TP measures, and therefore your potential for improvement against each. Now, when we get into a demonstration of seeing what comes out of the platform, you'll see that that's useful because when you combine that with an understanding of your overall tenant satisfaction, and maybe look into start to understand what the correlation is between each of those tenant perception measures and your overall performance and overall satisfaction, then in theory you can look at the most appropriate thing for you to focus your energy on. So here, this interface is pretty straightforward. You select the name of your provider. I've just picked one at random there. And down the bottom here in this executive summary, you'll see those three things mirrored. So you have your rank, your momentum, which is not possible until next year. But then here your priority. And all of this is color coded based on quartile for rank, and priority for the third item that you should be focusing on. Now, that combines the improvement potential for TP, tenant perception measure 04, which is the satisfaction with the time it's taken this provider to complete the most recent repairs that that tenant has observed. And then it's correlated with overall satisfaction. So what it's telling you in the most simple terms is exactly what to do based on the TSM data set. And just to demonstrate that different providers have different priorities, may have different priorities, I'll run a second one there and you can see that's a different measure. So flicking back to the presentation then, something that it sort of struck me is worth doing that actually Richard mentioned is that refinement piece. So I would be interested to know, okay, so the platform is available for free. The code that I built is open source, and in theory anybody can take that concept and build on it and develop what I would like to develop is a culture of innovation around these things. So do you agree with the recommended priority or the analyzed priority for your provider is the question I'd like to ask people on the call and others who might use the platform in future. So how did I build it? Well, ultimately the key is to be methodical. Curiosity helps, and an attitude towards play and a willingness to experiment with different platforms. Admittedly, I have done this outside of the normal constraints of an organization, and perhaps I wouldn't have been able to do exactly what use the tools exactly that I've used here in my day job. But there are tools available, as Richard mentioned. Copilot is a brilliant alternative. So it's certainly beneficial to be structured and methodical. And some of the resources I've used in my sort of journey in upskilling are on the screen here in front of you. So you can see General Assembly there. They run online fundamentals courses. Fundamentals of software architecture from O'Reilly has been very, very useful, because ultimately what I have built here is sorry. Very sorry. So this slide was intended to just frame the macro momentum towards adoption, and you can see here I've bolded some of the things in this broader pestle analysis I did when preparing for this around the multi-billion-pound investments that we're seeing, which are undeniable from the government. Major investment in skills as a result, and huge projections for market growth. And down the bottom left there, development of sector-based guidelines, which is partly why HAILIE exists and why we're all here. Now, the TSM data set, which we've used to build this tool, deals with some of those responses to an acuity survey that was conducted a few weeks prior to this event, and in particular the data access issue, which, as I mentioned, is an opportunity for us to reframe the obligation to deliver that data and to feed into that data set. But yeah, what I'd like people to take away ultimately is that for me, I sort of didn't know what was possible until I started exploring. So skipping across this slide very quickly, the approach that's suggested by Boston Consulting Group, and in particular the Henderson Institute, which exists to look at AI's impact by examining the widening value gap in AI adoption and what return on investment companies are actually getting, identified these three important statistics down the bottom. 89% of executives acknowledge the workforce needs AI skills, and that there's those organizations who are doing that are achieving a 40% boost to performance and productivity. But 6% of organizations have actually started initiatives. So I would like to propose a framework, and Boston Consulting Group have done that as well. Deploy, reshape, invent, which relies on existing software industry practices around iteration and rapid development. But what I found useful as somebody who has come at this from a totally novice perspective with an attitude towards play is first of all, terming this vibe coding is fun. You may also hear it referred to as AI human pair programming, and that's just one example of AI human pair professions which are emerging through the use of these tools. But ultimately, what you're doing is you're interacting with an AI model using natural language to describe an intent and steer. And I found it useful to frame this through design thinking. So what's it going to be like to use the tool as a human? A systems approach, so thinking about inputs and processes and interfaces and feedback loops when designing and making those decisions and utilizing your human creativity. And ultimately, the software architecture piece is about trade-offs and understanding that there are ramifications in the design of the decisions that you make throughout. So the tools that I actually used to build what I've presented to you and what is available now are two out of this huge number of options in the market. I used Claude, which is an alternative to Copilot or ChatGPT, but particularly good at coding. And I used a platform called Replit, which is a monthly subscription service, and that'll feed into a very quick cost précis that I'll take you through shortly. There are risks, of course, with anything to do with data and software, and the big things are, the big takeaway here is that in particular software security and that area is an expert area, and whenever you are building anything, which is what I am encouraging people to try, you should seek expert advice in that. And there are practices that we've employed when building the platform through HAILIE, for example, peer reviewing and code reviews and the use of collaboration platforms like GitHub, which goes towards that. But ultimately, the conversation has to be a serious one around data integrity and security. There is also a loss of agency when you use these platforms, which is to be noted. And then that last point, technical debt. Technical debt is an industry term for the realities that come out of the decisions you make around which tools you use, which you have to maintain in future. And that ties into this. So how long did it take? It took about 3 days of working time. That was over 2 months. So in dollars here, because it's an American platform, you can see that as $50 of cost, plus about 21 extra where I went over the limit for the month of what's included. That translates into £53 in subscriptions, plus the £130 a day, which is the average day rate, if you like, or daily salary of a software developer in the UK. Across 3 days, and I've just used that as a sort of a benchmark. So you get to about £450. Now, in traditional approach, that would be a similar platform from some very high-level research would be a minimum of £5,000, up to 25 actually, to produce a data analytics platform in a website, and then to deploy that to the web. Now, there's lots of factors to consider around complexity of the platform. Developer location and the rates of those individuals, third-party tools that you might need to use, the feature set in the analytics platform, etc., as well as the ongoing maintenance, of course, which can be 15 to 20% on these platforms. So it's the wild optimism should be viewed through a pragmatic lens as well around cost. But I thought it was useful to just show the stark difference there between what's possible now with these tools and what we would expect in a traditional approach. So let's take away then, almost anyone can do this. I am proof of that. We are proof of that here. This can allow you to transform any residual resistance to this, although personally I don't think there is a huge amount of resistance. I think people want to know, just tell me how I can do it, into a culture of innovation. This is one example of human AI pairing, and ultimately it does offer a new way to collaborate. As I say, Guy actually vibe coded a website with some ideas in that pointed me towards the TSM dataset and said, I want to help people to understand this better. But he did that with a website. He sent me a link to a website, which was how he communicated what we were going to go and do. There is, of course, a skills gap, which is a lot of what we're talking about. There are laws and cybersecurity considerations, etc. But ultimately, a structured, considered approach will give you a higher chance of successful outcomes through design thinking, systems thinking, and understanding a little bit of software architecture. So thank you. I will hand back over now. And I'd just like to leave you with the thought that the future of AI in the sector is incredibly promising. And we should embrace innovation and drive positive change across the sector and society.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tom. Really appreciate that, and all the hard work that's gone in days of work. And to temper that enthusiasm, we now have Claire. I'm joking. So,
well, there's an introduction. Yeah, so I'll introduce myself. I struggle with this because I tend to call myself a data strategist. I'm a consultant, speaker, author. But what I really do, everything that I do, isn't really about data. Data's just how we get there. It's about people, and it's about protecting people. So I don't need to come up with a new title for myself, a new way to introduce myself. So any ideas, except from Guy, because he's going to be horrible, are welcome. So yes, the laws I specialise in are the ones that people will go, oh, they are exactly as Guy just said, they're going to temper us, they're going to hold us back. Tom mentioned a lot of, that there are laws to consider here. That we have got data protection, data security, but they are so misunderstood. So data security, yes, is a part of it, but it's a small part of it. And that's what I want to get over today, to show how it fits with the wider everything that we're doing in housing, but obviously especially AI today. And actually it's very topical today, as Guy mentioned so movingly at the beginning, because the laws that I specialise in, they were born out of the Holocaust. People like to, I think, pretend that data protection is red tape and it's just a faff and we can just ignore it. One of the reasons I actually left employment was because of that attitude, that what I was trying to bring was about red tape that got in the way of doing everyone else doing their job properly. But actually, data protection, the foundation of it, the history of it, is born out of the Holocaust and the desire to prevent recurrence. And I don't think that when you look at that, excuse me, I'm sure nobody in housing would be against that. We are all on board with that, of course. We do want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, we have unintended consequences from some of what we do that we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. It's, knowledge is a really, really difficult thing. So the fact that the laws are called data protection laws doesn't help to start with, because it sounds like it's about the data. Actually, it's about the people. So it's people protection law. And that has, from there, I've gone into looking at equality law and EDI and all that sort of thing. And spent a really, really interesting day yesterday with Disability Sport Wales. So that's sort of given me loads more things to think about, and more knowledge and things to be grabbing onto. So another thing that one of you said earlier, Rich said about the horse has bolted, and that is so true, and actually brings me to the thing that I want to discuss today, is that AI, I'm going to go way back into mythology though, and talk about the Trojan horse. So AI, to me, in housing is very much the Trojan horse. It looks fabulous. It can be fabulous. I use it all the time. And there's not a lot of people in the data protection worlds or privacy worlds or whatever you call it that will admit that publicly, that will say, yeah, I use ChatGPT. I'm a paid up member. I absolutely, the benefits of it when it's used properly are absolutely fantastic. I use it to help me organize my thoughts. And because it's got a much better memory than me, it can remind me of things that I've already said or done. And I go, oh yeah, I did say that before. So, you know, being of a certain age, I need somebody with a better memory. And ChatGPT is quite often my memory. But why I say it's a Trojan horse is because it can look absolutely fantastic, but inside there is the ability, the capacity for it to attack our people. And we don't know that until we actually look inside and look at it with a different lens, with a different approach. Yes, being a bit more skeptical, not just expecting the best, which, because we all work in social housing, and a lot of the other sectors I work with, charities and so on, we are the good guys usually. You know, we care. That's why we're in the sectors that we're in. So we can find it quite hard to expect the worst. We can just be a little bit over optimistic and go, oh, brilliant, we've got this horse, this gift, isn't that beautiful? Let's pull it inside the gates of the city. And you need the guards, you need people like me to bring us back down a little bit and say, hang on a minute, let's just think, what could the worst case scenario be? Worst case scenario could be there's a whole load of soldiers inside that beautiful wooden horse ready to jump out and attack us once they get in. So we do need skeptical people like myself to bring us back. But I also want to say that all my skepticism and all my negativity that it can be seen as sometimes is still with that purpose of doing the right thing. It's just that sometimes what we think is the right thing, we're not aware of those unintended consequences. So my work is actually about creating a fairer world, and in particular a fairer housing sector. So that is what we all want. It's just that if we don't realise that some of the things we're doing are unfair. So some of the examples that I saw yesterday with the guys from Disability Sports Wales were people talking about being, so one guy I met yesterday, Paul, wheelchair user, he's in a wheelchair, he went to standard schools, and he said he hated it, wished he hadn't, because it was assumed all the time that he couldn't do certain things because he was in a wheelchair. So instead of working out what he could do, there were assumptions made about him, and he got treated unfairly. We make assumptions all the time. I mean, that's what our brains do constantly, all the time. We can't help it. But coming back to Tom talking about, I wrote down the words that you said about structured and methodical approach, because love that, absolutely. If we apply a structured and methodical approach to everything we're trying to do with AI, and part of that method is bringing in every type of other point of view, so people with different experiences, people with different lives, people with different characteristics, either directly bringing them in and getting them involved, or through just, you know, looking at the world around us and kind of trying to pull that in. That is going to help us avoid these unintended consequences and actually be producing a fairer world and a fairer housing sector. And so that's my bit about data protection that isn't really about data protection, because it's not about the data itself. It's about the impact we have on people. And there are loads of things we need to think about. And just the final message is that all the things we see at the moment about people talking about, yes, we need frameworks around AI and, you know, principles, and people are putting these together. They always include things that are already in the GDPR. It's fairness, transparency, accountability, security, purpose minimization, not being unfair, not profiling people and making unfair assumptions, having control over the data, having control over the outcomes. All of these things are already built into the GDPR. So whether it's data about people, like directly about people, about your customers, your tenants, then obviously you need to be applying that. But even if it's indirectly linked to people, you should be applying that as well. And even if it's not anything to do with people, you know, it could be environmental data completely not linked to people, still a damn good framework to start with. So why reinvent the wheel? Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Claire. Lots of food for thought there, and about how we can be applying some of those GDPR principles to the whole of the way that we're processing data. So yeah, great. Thank you very much to our 4 speakers. If there are any more questions, if you could put them in the chat and make it clear who they're addressed to. It's not clear by timestamp. That would be really, really helpful. So then we can get your queries answered. It would also help if during the next couple of minutes you could just jot down anything that you think we should be doing differently. So this is about us reflecting on our own process. So if you could just drop something at the, like about how we might be able to run this so that it's better value for you and helps you, supports you to deliver more good homes, because that's what we need to be doing. So if you can jot anything down. This was really quick. We covered a lot. Do you want that again next month? Do you want something deep dive? What would you like? And we can try to construct a thing for that. One of the things we've also been working on behind the scenes, so last time we took away a lot of actions. You may recall we had 7 actions that we were taking away. So some of those are still in progress. They're getting further mature. So Andy Johnson and Chris Watson and I have been working on this IT Director's Guide for AI. So we're hoping to be able to publish that in the next month or so as a draft for you lot to have a look at as well, to try to support our IT directors. Yeah, so any ideas that you have, if you could put them in the chat, that would be grand. You're also like, we can just have a little bit of a chat. I'm noticing Steve's comment there. We've got 4 minutes now. Should we just have a little chat while we're here? I mean, if there are any burning questions, of course, you can ask the speakers while they're here. So.
Sorry, I haven't put my hand up. Being very naughty. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that they're all quite different presentations and a lot to think about. I guess my reflections are, again, that part of the point of this community is there's a few of us out there thinking along similar lines, potentially expending efforts, which actually when we come together, it's clear we're trying largely to solve the same thing. So I think part of the point of this is actually what can we do together to make the things that we are creating better and to share the work rather than waste work individually. And then I think I was reflecting on I was thinking about Simon Sinek, Start With Why, for those of you familiar with that model. So when Tom and Claire are talking about the kind of structured approach and methodology, that sounds to me very much like that fits within the how bit. And the why bit, I think you led with, Guy, and you referenced we're here to do the right thing. But I think in this sector, we sometimes underplay that and we sometimes take it for granted. And so I think we should be making a conscious effort to dial that up, and that should then underpin all the hows that we're coming up with as well. But I think that's really powerful, and we've got a chance to amplify that.
So building on some of the concrete stuff you mentioned there, Steve. So probably in this session right here, there will be at least 15 people that are thinking about AI and its interaction with policy, right? At least. So yes. What can we do to reduce waste so that we can deliver more better homes, right? That's the thread. So we've got people in the room here that are caring about the same stuff. What should we do?
Big question, Guy. Big question, Guy. I think for me, that we talked about this a little bit at the organising committee meeting about, how do you get sort of that the sector's quite bad at innovating, and partly because people have got lots to do, partly because risk averse, all sorts of other things. But I think one of the things that I was thinking about was how do you get people to sort of actually take action on this? And one of the things might be the practicality of doing more with a fixed budget, in the context of if you can develop something like the TSM thing that Tom was showing for 1/10 of the price of a traditional software development method, subject to all the guardrails that everyone's talking about, peer review and so on. That might be a way to say, look, the reason you should be interested in this stuff is because if you want to actually, build something that can, I don't know, do sentiment analysis on your calls and help you to better deal with your customers, you can probably do it for 10 grand using this rather than 100 grand using conventional method. That, I think, is the kind of thing that perhaps we should be saying to people, with all the caveats. That is a good reason to say we should do this, not just because it's new and it's interesting, you can do different things, but potentially because it could offer better value for money than other technology approaches, and because ultimately all housing providers have got to do quite a lot with generally limited budgets and constraints that go all around the fact that you're spending public money or pseudo public money, you're spending tenants' money in the broadest sense. So I think that's a message we should try and push.
Thanks, Scott. So Ian, you've had your hand up for ages. Are you using that? Else, C Brown, you've just put your hand up if you want to.
Hello, can you hear me okay? It's Celia Warrender, but I won't even go into that, but I don't know why it's come up as Brown. I just wondered whether we've been working on an AI opportunity roadmap within our organisation. I think Dean's still online as well, our director, and I just wondered whether there was any merit in sharing information like that as a group to kind of have a look, actually, are we aligned on, actually, is that the next thing a few people want to do? Do we want to work on it together, or have we got stuff we can copy from each other, rather than, I imagine everyone now is building their own roadmaps independently. So just wondered whether there's any merit in sharing that kind of information with the group. I did check with Dean beforehand that we can share ours.
It feels to me like we should be sharing those kind of things. Yes, I agree. Practically, how would we want to do that? Do we want like a repository where we put these things, or what's like, how would you imagine that happening? I
hadn't really thought any further than just should we share it. But yeah, I guess a repository so that people can have a look at each other's and kind of go, I see you're working on that, we're doing something similar. Because I think otherwise, until you come to something like this, you go, oh, you've been doing that, well, you were doing something like that. Actually, I don't think there's any way other of really knowing that we're actually all working on quite similar things at the same time.
Okay, so in the short term, what we'll do is, if you've got a doc that you want to share, send it to me. I will also send out to our HAILIE mailing list to ask if anybody else wants to take part in this, and then we'll work out, based on the volume of stuff that we get, about how we would distribute that. If you make it clear about how widely you want it, that you're prepared, is it okay for it to go on the internet? Right, I guess that's the question. Or do we need logins and that kind of thing? So if you, any thoughts on that would be very welcome. Andy.
Yeah, no, just a thought really. I wondered whether it's worth us having some kind of matrix somewhere to show what people are working on, so that kind of, we can kind of look in and see who's working on certain projects to do with AI and go, oh, actually, these other 3 organizations are doing it, so we can kind of share, you know, what we found in our individual journeys, or work together on it, just so it's that kind of piece of knowing what people are doing, I think, that we don't have at the minute.
Great. I'm just going to write that into the chat as well so that we don't lose sight of it. Chris?
I wonder if they have the opportunity to share a number of different things. One might be policies, because it feels like a bunch of people are working on policies, and there's a risk that we all get distracted with policy creation, which I suspect might be fairly standard across the sector in terms of what the policy needs to do. There's then about plans, there's particular use cases and particular bits of coding. And I think actually sharing across all of those so that we end up with the right tooling, with the right governance as quickly as possible with minimum duplication might be helpful.
Chris, just on that, I'm not sure that standardization is there. We recently looked at 3 others from local organizations that have written theirs, and I'd largely written ours, and I used Copilot and literally said, right, here's 3 others of mine. What are the key differences between the 2? What are the gaps in mind that you're seeing in the others, and vice versa? And what we found, we were very much of a try and keep it short. We didn't want a 20-page policy document that, you know, people would get bored of reading by page 2. But then others did have 20-page documents. Some were very prescriptive. Others were absolutely lock it down with an into its life. Is Claire still on? Sorry, I don't know if she's still here. But, you know, very obviously risk averse, where we were like, well, my approach was very much let people use it. People will make mistakes using AI, but that's okay because we're all learning, and we can use them mistakes to then, you know, put that right further down the line. And so I think there is lots of discrepancies there, but it was still a useful exercise to see how ours differed from what other people were doing. But I just disagree with the thing. We're all probably writing the same thing. We are, but we're not. I think would be my take on that. Thank you.
I echo that. There's definitely a lack of uniformity, if only. But yeah, we did some research as well and found the same.
I like the idea of bringing them together, and then use some of the stuff that Abby was talking about earlier to compare, contrast, find gaps. It'd be really interesting to see.
Can I just ask, what's stopping everyone from sharing this information? What's the barrier? Because
I'm not sure there is one. I just don't think that there's already been the opportunity to come together and say, shall we share it, or somewhere to do it. It sounds like everyone's saying, let's share it, but there's just no coordinated approach to sharing it, I think, at the moment.
I think, Guy, I mentioned it's because I think the issue, or it's not an issue, it's we're all doing the same thing, and you could save so much time and learning from it if we probably talk more about it. Because I think, Guy, you did that talk, and the amount of people that I could hear saying, oh yeah, we're doing this, and I'm thinking, well, everyone's talking about the same thing. Everyone knows that they're talking about the same thing, but there's not a collaborative approach. So it might be one for how do we go about sharing this, because I mentioned in the chat Liverpool City region, I mentioned they've got the Office of Public Service Innovation, and they're looking at data specifically, and I mentioned to them, I was like, well, you might want to widen your horizon, because they're working with housing associations in Liverpool City region. So again, it's probably an opportunity.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, picking up Chris, and I think the points raised about sharing standardized documents, etc. If you go on the Dash website, you'll find guides on governance, bespoke for the social housing. You'll find guides on strategy, bespoke for the social housing organisation. Will save you a mountain of time. If you want to go on there, they're free, they're downloadable, all ready to take and adopt, and they're built on work that's been done in the States, etc. So they're all credible and usable, and so please just if you want to do policies, we've got most of them just for tenant, and that's where I think you should be spending time and effort. So that's just a view. And if you want to do more training, we've got courses, guides on training, etc. There's a huge amount of stuff ready to roll, and just use it.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, Peter. And Catherine?
I was just going to make the point. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people in this group, and I should imagine everybody is moving at different speeds. And there's probably organisations sitting around on this call that have got significantly greater budgets than I have to play with on this. I have a budget of 0, apart from intellectual curiosity and a great desire to get this on the move in my organisation. So I'm just kind of wondering, you know, are we going to end up with like a kind of 2-tier system within HAILIE where, you know, there's people with big budgets, IT teams and the like, data analysts? I'm really my organisation's main data analyst. And although I've got skill sets in that field, because I used to do this as a job a long time ago, I'm still I'm a lone voice in the wind. So how could HAILIE perhaps try and help me, please?
Yeah, that's brilliant, Catherine. So I have strong views on this. So I think we can together be going very, very fast if we actually all go in slightly different directions on the things where it makes sense to do that. So yeah. Small providers, I think, are where a lot of the innovation is going to end up coming from, because actually you don't have so much of the baggage that the large providers have. But this is a whole separate discussion. And Scott's got a hand up, so I'll step aside.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
I was just going to say, in terms of sort of the repository idea is obviously good for sharing particular documents, but I wonder whether it's also worth doing a questionnaire, for the want of a better word, using Microsoft Forms or something, to people who signed up with a few questions like, you know, where have you got to on writing an AI policy? You know, how do you deal with governance? Have you got any use cases in the following categories? You know, repairs and maintenance, etc., etc. So we can kind of get a snapshot of where people are at, and perhaps every 3 to 6 months people update that as a way of people then being able to go, oh look, they're, you know, so and so is doing is writing something to do with damp and mold, and I'd like to talk to them about it, that kind of thing.
I'll add it to the ideas list and let's pick this up. I'm aware that there's been a lot of state of AI reports published, including those that are specifically housing related. And I'm not sure we need that. We need action, right? And you're using that as a vehicle to provide to allow that collaboration. I think we need to think about it a bit. But yeah, certainly we, like this sort of fishing to work out what we've got that people are willing to share would be really sensible. Brilliant. So we've run over. We've done the 15 minutes that Steve Aleppo thought we should be doing of discussion at the end. In terms of next session, I think so Peter Lunio was going to do a bit of design around what the next session is going to look like. I'm sure he's going to build in a nice section for us to be able to interact on some of these topics, and we'll take away these Q&A that we've got in the chat, and we'll be responding to those en masse. The video of this, probably including this discussion because it was quite helpful, will be uploaded onto YouTube because that's how we do it, unless anybody has any particular problem with that, GDPR and all. So no, seriously, so that's sort of the intent here. Anything else before we go? Are we happy? How was this? Maybe you can emoji about how this session was, and a bit of feedback. Got to learn, haven't we? Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you again to our speakers and for all the participation here. Great work. Let's keep going.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.